Hey guys, welcome to another episode of SEO on Air. Today we have Alan Bush. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Doing great, Alan. Guys, to give you an introduction about Alan, so Alan is the VP of Strategy at Ignite Visibility, and he's also an instructor of SEO and Web Analytics at University of California, San Diego. He's been doing some great things. He's also a public speaker. He does a lot of podcasts, but he's quite senior to all of us when it comes to podcasts in SEO. And he's also having special interest in social media marketing. And he's been a panelist for a lot of events. We are really delighted to have Alan on the show. Alan, welcome once again.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Great intro.
Great. So, Alan, the topic that we planned for this podcast is about knowledge graphs, and of course, knowledge graph panels, featured snippets. I mean, it's just all over the place. And we strongly believe that post this COVID world, there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs coming out. There's going to be a lot of companies, new companies coming in. So, it'll be ideal to, for these companies, it'll be very helpful to understand about what this knowledge graph panel is, how to get featured over there. So we just wanted to learn more about it. And, we know you have done a lot of great things with regards to this. And, we really hope, you can give us a great learning with regards to this questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really an important factor within the search engines because people want to be seen, and the knowledge graph really gets you an opportunity to get. It's almost like ranking zero. We call it at Ignite ranking zero because it's actually above, in many cases, above the organic listings number one. And there's some debate on whether or not it's actually beneficial because basically, if you get the information you want, you may not click on the website. So there's some discrepancy about how the click-through rates are with there, but there is something to be said for being kind of the representation of that knowledge or the query that people are typing in, and your results show up first. So there's a lot of benefits to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these days there are quite a lot of knowledge graph panels, isn't it, Alan? The company panels, the individuals, local stores, products, food and nutrition, medical symptoms. I mean, it's just, there's a long list of knowledge panels. So how do these actually work? Where do they get this data? Is it like just one source you get featured? I know that a lot of people say only Wikipedia, if you're there, it's a guaranteed one. But is this still the norm these days, or how does this really work now?
Well, in reality, it's more about how the query grabs information. So essentially, Wikipedia is a really great resource. So a lot of times when it's funny, Google will say, hey, don't copy data, but yet they grab the data and put it in their search engines, and it's copying data. So it's kind of a strange thing. But the bottom line is they're not necessarily grabbing just from Wikipedia. If you're a resource if you're kind of seen as the thought leader in your space, then they're going to grab that information from your website. And depending on the query, like you said, the medical was not going to grab Wikipedia data because Wikipedia is not the right resource to grab medical related data in most cases. It might be a WebMD or something that's a little bit higher end. If you're the thought leader in your space, even without a Wikipedia page, Google may grab information from your website because you're seen as the resource that people go to for specific queries. So things may be related to your industry, things may be related to a person in your industry. It doesn't necessarily have to grab Wikipedia data. So I think that it's important to provide Google with as much information on what you do. That's why writing content, writing blogs, answering queries like literally, like answering questions that a lot of people might be asking is important because you'll be able to blog about that or write articles about that on your website, and then you might be seen as the resource for that particular query.
Right. Great. So how does that? So I understand that yes, beyond Wikipedia, there are quite a lot of places that you have to be having a conversation with people and trying to build a brand. Now, is there any hack? I know that it sounds crazy, but so for example, if we take a startup which is there and they want to get featured on a knowledge panel. So what steps can they take? For example, they can get featured on, using the Google Maps. They can definitely try to do that. using the GMB. But apart from that, is there anything like, can they increase the number of backlinks from them? I know, local directories and, the typical directory submissions of the, in the mid 2000s where people are going all crazy over it, the directory submission, the local citations and stuff.
Yeah.
So is there something, if a company can get a lot of backlinks from these directories, is it possible for them to get into knowledge panel, or, is there any relation to that?
Yeah, there is. I think that what you mentioned about the local resources, especially for local businesses, I think that's a really important factor. Your brand, for the most part, is probably going to be solidified, but even then, I have an anecdote I can tell you
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of times you need certain resources to be in place. But yeah, the local listings, the amount of backlinks, the traditional SEO methods really help. I think when I teach the class is four pillars of SEO. There's the site architecture, how your websites are architect, the code optimization, the content on your website, and backlinks. And then I think all four of those things always go through varying degrees of need and necessity for different parts of website optimization and for the search engines. And I think that for the most part, yeah, the backlinks is really important. The anecdote I'm going to tell you, though, is related to a client that called us up literally just to talk to me every week. And he did some research on me, funny enough, after he found out that I was going to work on his account, and I was the director at the time. And we just talked every week, right? He knew a lot of SEO, but he was having problems getting in the knowledge graph. And even for his own brand, I even give him a shout out, HYPR. And they basically, for whatever reason, weren't showing for their brand in the website. What I discovered is that there's certain websites that Google takes a little bit more seriously, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Wikipedia is one of them. Another one is called wikidata.org. And there's things like, I think formerly was called Freebase. There was another website a long time ago called Freebase. But these places are where Google grabs information about your website. So Better Business Bureau, a few other places. But we noticed that, at least when I was doing the research, that the links that were linking from those websites were going through a redirect.
Oh, okay.
It was literally like HTTP versus HTTPS. He moved to HTTPS, and he went to secure, which you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I discovered that, we basically said, okay, well, let's fix that. And then any resources you have, fix them and make sure that the links are direct links rather than going through any kind of redirect. Doesn't matter if it's the right name or not. And sure enough, that's what set it back up in line. Google was just confused about what version of the website it was, and the data was inaccurate. And he was really ecstatic about that. He was like, oh my God, he figured it out. And it took a couple of weeks to really kind of boil down where the websites are pulling from. But I think that that's the main, the key ingredient is, yes, you need those placements, but yeah, it's really important that they accurately represent your URL, because things like Wikidata, Wikipedia, the thing I mentioned, Freebase, and any other resources should have a direct communication to what is variation of your website. Otherwise, you run the risk, and in this case, he ran the risk that Google doesn't understand that that's the right website. The data is quote unquote inaccurate, and therefore, they don't want to paint that picture in literally paint the picture in their search engine results if the data is not accurate. So it's important to make sure that any place you're getting links from, that there's not, especially things that mention your brand, what we call citations, and what we call structured or unstructured citations, places that just talking about your brand are accurately representing the URL and the information that's on your website.
Right. Wow. This is like a great hack, So guys, if your knowledge panel is not getting triggered, and if you still have got featured on Wikipedia and all, the first thing I think you should be checking is, are you pointing the resource to your right website, So like Alan mentioned, if the HTTP, the HTTP to HTTPS, just the redirect. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are using it, isn't it, Alan? I mean, now if they're not these days, you have this by default. And, that could be one of the reasons that your knowledge graph is perfect.
Yeah, I think some people forget that when they switch over to HTTPS, which you should be doing if you're a major company at all, is switching to secured version of the website because you want it to be more encrypted. But people forget that the assets that they own, that they've owned previously, may not have, they might just say HTTP your website. And it's important to anything that you have any control over, that you make sure that you recreate and change the URL to represent that. Don't just rely on redirects, because the thing is, the redirect's there for anybody linking from the outside in to find your website. Of course, you leave them in place to make sure that's the case, but don't rely on them, because again, if you think about what redirects really are, if I told you to take a detour to my house every single time you came to my house, it would be annoying, right? You'd have to go. I could tell you the straight route rather than taking it's taking miles off course. Now this is all milliseconds online, but the bottom line is that those milliseconds add up if you have a million websites linking to you. So, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but the bottom line is, like, think about how much it takes to get there, and you want the accurate representation of where you actually are. So, Google and Bing and Yahoo want the most accurate information they can get, and they reward you by saying, okay, well, now you're eligible for the knowledge graph, and we see that your placements are across the web, and we'll give you that reward by putting you in our search engine results.
Right. Yeah. And I believe, since you touched upon that, the HTTP to HTTPS, then I believe, the non-www to the www version, that also could, be a trigger, I think. So I think people should be very aware that they're getting their links down to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you hit the nail on the head. It's like there's a lot of canonical things, and you might have fixes that take that in place, and there's no problems with that. And I think people have to be aware that SEO is not just a series of fixes per se. It's really just making it easier for search engines to understand your information. And that's the key ingredient. We're optimizing. We're not just making fixes, but we're also making it easier for them to digest that information, because they will reward you if you're able to do that. That's how you get ranked. It's how you get ranked in search engines. It's how you get in the knowledge graph, is that they understand that your structured website is a certain way, and then they will grab that information and compare it to other people's information. And if you're the best of that, best representation of that through backlinks and content and what you're providing, then therefore they will put you in their results more importantly and probably more frequently.
Yeah. So I think then the first step to get onto Knowledge Graph panel is to first forget about it and then focus on the basic common SEO guidelines. Get your website up, properly set up, like you mentioned, the 4 pillars that you mentioned, to ensure that the code is proper, the content, the backlinks, all the basics are properly set up, including your canonicals, the redirects, and, hopefully, and if you're also getting it into the Wikipedia, it's a double win. And, hopefully, and I think it should be taken care of automatically.
Yeah. A lot of that is the basics are so funny, because I talk to prospects and clients and people who become clients, and a lot of times I'll find something. Like, I always find something. I do an audit, a process, usually in my class, that I show the classroom. Like, look, even without tools, you can audit the website and find at least 1 or 2 things that could be either fixed or improved upon. And that's the idea. It's like, I usually use the analogy that I don't understand how a car works necessarily, but I do know that I have to clean the air filter, in the case of certain cars, right? So that will, if I do clean that, it makes the engine run better and run smoothly, and the gas is more efficient. So that's the idea. So even you get all the backlinks you want, you can have all the content you want, but if your website's not structured properly, then it might be harder for those backlinks and those content to perform. So you really want to kind of fuel the engine a little bit better. And I think that that's the important part. I will say also, there's elements you can actually do, and I don't know if we're jumping ahead a bit, but I think that there's things within, there are, I wouldn't call them hacks, but I will say that the way your pages are structured could actually contribute to how search engines digest it. And I've noticed that if you provide, this, I might be giving away a secret here, but if you provide content that's also listed, ordered list, like bullet points, for whatever reason, that seems to appear more frequently in the knowledge graph. And I'll give you another example. We had a client that we structured their page related to, I'll just say, astrology gemstones, right? and it wasn't like a big keyword. It was actually
Yeah.
not a bad
Because
keyword.
the astrology is the most dependent thing these days. They are more better,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah,
yeah,
that,
everyone's looking to the stars now. Like, I don't know what's going on. The world's in chaos. Let me look at the stars. But yeah, that page, well, they were ranking, but they weren't in the knowledge graph, and we structured their page a certain way. It was interesting because we had like introduction paragraph, we had bullet point listing, we had we had images that supported what we were talking about, and then we had supplemental paragraphs that structured. It was literally just the structure of the website,
right,
the structure of that content that changed the purview of how Google liked their information. And
right.
they want it, what I give the analogy is that, the people that created Google,
Mm-hmm.
likely thought of websites like a term paper, right? If you think about all the elements that, and you guys are familiar with SEO, like,
Mm-hmm.
you have your site maps, which are basically like a table of contents. And then
Right,
you have you use, ordered lists, and when you want to list certain things out, your grammar a certain way. And then when you want to reference a website, you might, point to them with a link,
right,
on the page that you're on, referencing where you got that information from, right? Or an internal page to reference page 5 to see more about this thing. And that's how Wikipedia works. And that's also
yeah,
a lot of times they'll reward, websites for being structured that way. So if you think of your website almost like how you would write a term paper, it's a little bit more intricate than that, obviously, but the bottom line is, like, when you write your content, write it like that, and Google technically rewards you for that. This is what the page is about. Here's your heading. Here's your paragraphs. Here's the supplemental information. Here's the references. Here's your, table of contents. Maybe you should look at the DSM-4 or whatever content guidelines there are in college now. It's been a long time since I've been in college, but I do notice that similarity, and I think that that's how they really digest information.
right, right. That's a lot. No wonder Ignite Visibility is one of the leading, SEO agency back in the US. I mean, you guys have like literally experimented everything. This is why we love, bringing in people like you, Alan, because you guys have done it, and only you could give us better hacks like this. So I really appreciate it. And by the way, guys, to give you a background of Ignite Visibility, I mean, if you're aware of SEO, the movie, I mean, these guys have done it. I mean, it's like a crazy idea, Alan. How do you guys even come up with that idea, by the way?
Yeah. John Lincoln is by far one of the best people I've worked with and for. He's a pioneer in the industry, for one. For two, he'll come up with concepts and be like, and I remember I talked about it a little bit before we got on the air, but like,
Mhm.
he brought it up early on that he was thinking about doing. He's thinking about doing a movie, SEO the
Mhm.
movie. He just kind of chatted with me randomly.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Why wouldn't, there's no one doing that right now. And he has connections. He has friendly, we have friendly competition and people
Mhm.
he's done a lot of talks. He does more talks than I do.
Mhm.
Um, but the bottom line is, he had some connections, and then I think through word of mouth and through just reaching out to people, people
Mhm.
were very receptive to doing that. A lot of the big names like Barry Schwartz and Rand Fishkin and Danny Sullivan at the time, people were like, oh my God, yeah, I totally be a part of this. You got to put that, you got to put the movie together. And it wasn't just a hokey thing where you just kind of filmed things. It actually was done pretty professionally. And I think,
Yeah.
a lot of people will get a lot of benefit for it because it is free. It's online. I actually wanted to put it on Netflix or something. I was like, oh, get it on Netflix, like make it a movie, like actually I want to see it like on quote unquote TV.
Mhm.
But I think it was just a concept that he had, that he was
Mhm.
thinking that it would be a great idea to have, almost like a Valentine to the SEO industry, and not just in an article or a blog or a video on YouTube, but like, let's make the movie. How did this happen? What happened? What is the history behind what is now called SEO? A lot of us, back in my day when I was in college, there was no such thing.
Yeah.
I had a friend that I met by virtue of putting a website together from at USC,
Mhm.
would find my website. People would find my website randomly, and
Mhm.
I have a friend that was from, Trinidad and Tobago, and she's still my friend, but it was through technically SEO because it was called The Tempest,
Wow.
and she was looking for Shakespeare stuff because she was in college or whatever it was, and she happened to stumble upon my website. But this is before
Mhm.
SEO was a thing. And then, as search engines became more sophisticated, then SEO evolved into an industry.
Yeah.
And so what John and the people that were really in the movie were talking about is how that happened, what was the nature of it, and what was going on. And I'm sure he missed a few people. There's a few people that are key players in the industry, but
Mm-hmm.
he got the ones that he could on the movie. There's quite a few actually
Mm-hmm.
that talk about their intro to it, the
Mm-hmm.
people that were pioneering, the people that were trying to figure out how the search engines worked,
Mm-hmm.
and then in a way that was friendly to the search engines,
Yeah.
and made an industry out of it. So they're ones we have to thank for my job and my career, actually, if I think about it.
So I believe that should be a part two then, looking at the reception that you got for the first one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be great, actually. We also did, John did the social media of the movie as well. If you look, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube somewhere, but, he did the same thing with social media, marketing people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the next one's probably maybe paid, paid search the movie, email the movie, all the services of the movie.
Great. Nice to know. Now, I mean, good people. I mean, it's really great that to be part of the community. I mean, most of the people have seen it. They see the movie, and the first time when we saw the trailer, we thought, oh gosh, are they gonna say something bad about SEO? Because it's like the underground SEO, the the
Yeah,
back
Black Hat, the movie.
Black Hat the movie. And just thought, oh gosh, it's going to be something like that. Then we saw it's like directed by John and the team. And then we thought, oh, okay, it's going to be on the positive side of SEO. That's good. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it definitely gives a bad rap sometimes. I think with SEO,
Yeah. So,
people think it's all snake oil, or you're just trying to sell something that it doesn't really work, but it does. And it's really techniques. When I think about SEO, and I'm glad I'm teaching it because I'm able to tell students what I believe is the truth rather than the smoke and mirrors. There's so many articles and hacks, and
mhm.
and I try to boil it down to the essentials, so that people can take away what they do. Because I don't believe that it's a bunch of fixes and hacks. I believe it's a strategy and a way of thinking that you have to pioneer to your website for search engines to respect you in a certain way. And I think with true SEO, it's
Mhm.
more about how to think, how to strategize, and how to convey your message rather than, or let me just cram keywords and get a bunch of backlinks, and because that stuff used to work, but it no longer does. So I think that it's important to really, the people that have really persevered and pioneered the SEO space will understand that it's all
Absolutely.
about adding that stuff. And one more note, that there is a correlation with what we call schema.
Mhm.
Schema.org is
Mhm.
the agreed upon language to help mark up search engines. So the knowledge graph and those rich snippets do pull information from schema. And what schema does, it's an additional bit of code. And again, it goes back to code optimization, right?
Mhm.
So it's inserting that information and telling Google, Bing, and Yahoo, because it's agreed upon by those three major search engines, that this is information that is talking about a specific thing. So if you had a recipe, for example, you
Mhm.
could use the schema to say, this is a recipe, this is what the information is on there. And if you type in certain things in that correlate with the recipe, those rich snippets will appear in
Right.
the information that's there. So if you're able to, you don't need schema to get it in the knowledge graph, but it definitely helps
Mhm.
in helping understand the search engines understand your content, because that's what schema does. It tells the search engines what your content's all about. It's like kind of giving you a summary of what's happening. And so if they understand that, then they'll grab the content from your place and go, okay, this is very useful. A lot of people are linking to it. The content's really good. Let me put it in the rich snippets. And one more tip I could give you is also,
Mhm.
if you use a tool like SEMrush, for example,
Right.
um, it's a paid tool. I'm not sponsored by them, I swear, but
Mhm.
you can really use their you could do some competitive analyses. You could look at keyword research, and they actually have a feature within there with the keyword research that will tell you which queries or which keywords
Yeah.
will likely appear in a rich snippet. So
Right.
then you can say, okay, let me target that and answer that question, and
Mhm.
use other tools to figure out what are people asking. Let me add that content so I can address that situation, so that when people ask that question or people type that query in,
Mhm.
I'm the one that's more likely going to come up.
Right. Great. So there's definitely a correlation with the structured data, the knowledge panels, the featured snippets. I mean, they're all, I think probably in a few years down the line, it'll be purely based on the structured data, I believe, because, obviously the markup is there. And obviously, if we have a better domain authority and a good structured data being set up, then I think it's quite easy for Google to trust it and get it on the knowledge
Yeah.
panels and stuff, I think. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the main thing. And I stress the importance of the structure of your content
Yeah.
is a big deal because, if you write in a way that isn't conducive to understanding, then they're not going to really consider you as part of that. I think that structure your data is a very important part of it, and adding that structured data markup language is important as well. And I think that's really helpful. Again, just think of your website like you would write a term paper for a professor.
Right.
How are they going to understand what's on that page? Well, then
Mhm.
you got to write it that way, cite your sources, create lists if you have them, and make sure that you're providing the value of your information in a way that is digestible and understandable to someone that might be coming in trying to look and critiquing your information because you're against a lot of other people. And so that's what you're on the bell curve of what is going on online. So think of Google as your professor.
Mm.
You want to get an A, right? So get that A, make sure you write your data and information, include that structured data, to get that A that Google will approve, and then you'll more likely get in those search results.
Yeah. So that means, and also, like you mentioned in the term paper, you should always write it from the top to bottom in the correct way. Because
Hmm.
in my university days, the first few pages, the handwriting will be good, and then the speed increases, and then towards the end, the last page, even I don't know what I've written. So, because of the time frame, if
Yeah,
I
we probably went to the same university. That's how I did it.
so the first few pages will be really good, we'll be happy about it, and then, oh gosh, the time is running, and then the speed goes on, and then that's it. I feel sorry for the guy who actually corrected my papers, but, so I think the same applies to the website. I think that's what you're trying to highlight as well, the proper code optimization, ensure that everything is perfect because that's the only control that you can have, right? Because the other
Yeah,
things you can't control, how the way Google, they might change their algorithm, but as far as the guidelines are concerned, it hardly just have a checklist. I think the probably we should link out to some of the posts that you have done, Alan. I mean the one that you said, the 4 pillars. I mean that's by default, and probably if there is a checklist, that will be great for people to at least have a list of things, so that the companies, the new ones that's going to be coming up, it's going to be really helpful for them, right?
yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I may even create a new one because I've noticed just trends of working with a lot of different agents. I've been in the business for over 12, 13, 14 years, something similar to that. I can't even count anymore. So what I've learned from how Google interacts, obviously it does change and adapt, but
Mhm.
we work with so many different companies, so many different industries, being in an agency life. I've been in agency life most of the time I've been in the industry. It's basically, there's certain things that are trend. You see patterns. That's what SEO really is, understanding the pattern of information and content and that type of thing. So my 4 pillars is basically what was taught to me very early on, and it has not really deviated from that, with the exception of the degree. And each pillar has a variety of things within them that
Right.
you have to pay attention to. So it gets a lot more complicated. But if you think of that in that context, yeah, it's really about how your website's structured and the code that's in there, like the schema, again, the markup you mentioned earlier, and then the content itself, of course. It should be structured a certain way. Again, think of term paper, and then also getting attention to those things. It really helps that you get backlinks and other and even internal links that are linking to those pages will also help increase your validity. This is all for rankings, but the knowledge graph has an extra layer where that information is going to be a lot more important. And I think that providing, making sure everything is kind of dialed in, everything to, like you said, you have direct control over. Dial it in as much as possible. Make sure you're linking to things without going through redirects, and then providing that structured data markup is going to help increase the likelihood that you'll appear in the knowledge graph.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's like a great roundup of what we have discussed and a lot of key action items over there. Well, Alan, I'm pretty sure someone listening to this is going to take away with a lot of information from this podcast. And that's the only aim for us for conducting these podcasts is to, get people on board, who actually done the work. And these guys have a lot of hacks. As you can see, Alan, the passion on SEO has been literally clear about what you do. And it's really great. It was fun speaking with you, Alan. A lot of information. On behalf of the community, I'd like to thank you so much, for spending your valuable time and coming over here and explaining to us how the knowledge graph works, how the companies can especially claim these, and what are the list of things that you should be checking that out, especially the hacks. I mean, the redirects, checking those things. These are small things that people might skip, but these might actually hurt a lot of traffic. Because these days the position zero is what gets most of the clicks.
Yeah.
It's really great. Thank you so much, Alan, once again. It's been a
I
pleasure
appreciate
having
it.
you on the podcast. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Thanks for bringing me on board.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Goodbye.
You do the same. Take care.